Welcome back to DataBytez, your number one source for data-driven content, and today's subject is life. And specifically, you have to use your voice, but at the same time, shut up. Now, the juxtaposition might be a bit interesting. They kind of go against each other. I'm telling you to use your voice, but also shut up. Now, there's a reason for this, and that'll become apparent as we go on, but it's true. You have to learn to use your voice, but you also need to know to shut up. So going into our first slide here, and the real importance here about using your voice is the fact that no one can read your mind. No one knows what you're thinking. No one knows how talented you are. No one knows how capable you are. No one knows the solutions that you come up with. It's impossible to see, and in order for anyone to have a grasp on your capacity to solve problems, for your ability to achieve, you have to speak up. I've been in situations, I'm sure you have, where people are talking and all this kind of stuff, especially when I was a bit younger. I wouldn't say that, maybe even until recently, where you're in like a meeting, people are discussing problems and you can see the solution, you have it, but you just don't say anything, and when you don't speak up, you smother your opportunities in the cradle. Self-censure will destroy your opportunities. It destroys everything before you even start. And so you have to know to communicate your ideas, because no one else is going to do it for you. No one is going to stand up and care about you as much as you will. That's just the truth. And beyond that, speaking up has a secondary effect, a secondary benefit, which is known as the Babel Effect. This is something I came across in Hidden Potential by Adam Grant, and this is the excerpt that really, it defines it. So when we select leaders, we don't usually pick the person with the strongest leadership skills. We frequently choose the person who talks the most. It's called the Babel Effect. Research shows that groups promote the people who command the most airtime, regardless of their aptitude and expertise. We mistake confidence for competence, certainty for credibility, and quantity for quality. We get stuck following people who dominate the discussion instead of those who elevate it. And I'm sure you've experienced this in life. It's just a very common thing. People get promoted who really don't deserve it, who shouldn't be in the position they're in, just because they talk. The point should never be lost that we are not logical creatures. We don't follow absolute logic. We don't listen to the most logical argument. We listen to people who sound the most confident, sound sure of themselves. So if you had an intelligent person who sounded uncertain, and that's the irony here, is that intelligent people usually are uncertain, because they can realize the multiple facets, the multiple dimensions to a specific problem. And so they end up wondering, well, this could be the case, but maybe this, but maybe that. They consider all the different possibilities. And so they begin to question, while someone else will just confidently say, no, it's this. They might be ignoring multiple dimensions of the problem, but because they are confident in what they say, they will get the floor. They command the room. And so it has nothing to do with how competent you are. It has everything to do with how confident you are. Now, you could abuse this to elevate yourself when you really don't deserve it. But the bigger lesson, the bigger takeaway here is that if you are competent in what you do, if you really know your stuff, you need to talk. You need to talk a lot. Talk probably more than you're comfortable with. I know getting to the point where I could talk on this microphone it took me a bit, because I don't really like to talk, and this is a skill that's taken to practice. And you might use the internet in this kind of fashion to practice your speaking ability and to develop your ability to project confidence. You could choose that avenue, just continuously putting yourself in situations where you have to stand up for your thoughts, for your beliefs, in a way that is productive, right? And not just being antagonistic and saying like, I believe this, in a room full of people who are just going to label you kind of an asshole. But projecting your solutions, you need to do that. Do that more often, and people will look to you and really recognize that you are competent and able to do this, what you can. Now, leading on this Babel effect, we have to also remember appearances are deceiving. When teams were, again, reading from Adam Grant's Hidden Potential here, when teams were relatively reactive, waiting for direction from above, extroverts drove the best results. They asserted their vision and motivated teams to follow their lead. But when teams were proactive, bringing many ideas and suggestions to the table, it was the introverts who led them to achieve greater things. The more reserved leaders came across as more receptive to input from below, which gave them access to better ideas and left their teams more motivated. With a team of sponges, the best leader is not the person who talks the most, but the ones who listens best. So here comes the kind of balancing act, right? So on one hand, we have the Babel effect, which will help elevate you by talking more. But at the same time, when you look at the data here, when you look at how things actually work, when you listen more, when you're able to field more from your team, when you make people feel heard, you actually achieve better things. So you kind of have to know when to wear the mask, right? Yeah. When you are, I would say when you're more in the contributing side, you need to be willing to talk more. And when you're in the leadership position, you need to learn to listen more. So talking gets you to leadership, but listening is what will kind of skyrocket your leadership potential, will make you the better leader, that someone that people are willing to follow. So not getting absorbed and just saying, you develop this identity where everyone's willing to listen to you. And so you start believing that you have all the answers. No. It's all an act, right? You talk because you know this is what's going to get you up there, but you listen because you know that's what's going to lead to the best outcomes. And I want to relate this entire discussion because we're looking at, Adam Grant is if I remember right, a psychologist. So he's looking at things from a psychological perspective, and he's looking at data and these things. But I want to relate this to power dynamics because I'm a big fan of power dynamics. I'm a big fan of the biggest writer of power dynamics, Robert Greene, one of my favorite writers. And I like this because you can see how this plays out in a non-scientific way. This is just how we are as social creatures. And so this is how power dynamics roll out. And his sixth law in the 48 Laws of Power, his seminal book, the thing that made him famous that you've probably heard at least once, is courting attention at all costs. So he writes, everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd. Then, or buried in oblivion. Stand out. Be conspicuous. At all costs, make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. Again, you can tie this into the Babel effect. You want to just keep talking. You want to keep projecting a force of confidence. Keep getting attention. Just keep being in the limelight. Ideally for good things rather than bad, but you want to court attention at all costs. You want to be heard at all costs. It's just the way that things work, man. I don't make the rules up, but I can notice the patterns, and I'm sure you're noticing this pattern at some point in your professional life where you never know how some people get promoted over others. And usually the people that are the workhorses getting everything done don't say much. They just do their work. They're the ones who fall to the wayside, and resentment builds because they're not getting moved up, even though they're doing all this work. Because why? They're not courting attention. They're not talking. They're not putting themselves in a position where they can be seen. And it's all about visibility. The more visible you are, the more opportunities open up for you. So that leads us to the balance, right? So the balance here is for my silent people, for the people who don't like to talk, someone like me, I've never really liked talking. You need to court more attention. No one is just going to notice you. No one's going to look at the room and be like, look at that quiet person in the corner and be like, you know what? They probably got something to say. No one has insight into your thoughts. You just need to work up the courage to speak. You need to work up the courage to be in front of people. You need to work up the courage to be a presenter. And the next part, for my talkative people, talk less. Learn to listen more. The ability to take in multiple perspectives and promoting the best person to the front, putting them in the best position as a leader. You want to make them in the right, the part where they're most effective, is a valuable skill and will really make you a valuable, leader here. So coupled with your natural charisma, for those of you who are naturally talkative, you are naturally charismatic, people like you, you will stand out from the rest of the talkative people by being a great leader. And that just comes, again, from listening more. It's funny. It reminds me of a time where I went to this, I guess like a board game thing. It's like a game night. And there were a couple of people there all playing in games, blah, blah, blah. And there was at one point, there was a group game. And I knew the answer. I kind of saw the solution there. But there was this, 2 or 3 people that just would not shut up. They were just talking so loud to the point where it's kind of obnoxious that, not everyone could really have a conversation to kind of say in. At least that's how my memory goes of the situation. Because they were just so loud. And our team ended up losing. And it was revealed that I had the right answer. And so they go well, how come you didn't say anything? And I look at the guy and I was like, I did say something, but you talk too much. And well, I never really went back to that game night. And those guys drove me crazy, but they were really more the life of the party because they were the ones talking the most. So that's just an example of where you need to speak up. I should have spoken up more, but I was kind of agitated because they just wouldn't shut up and they were just being very loud. So, but they're the ones who probably are doing better in whatever position they are because that's the kind of person, the personalities they have. It's not a bad thing. It's not a crux against them, but it does annoy me because I don't like people who talk too much. And then finally, speaking up is step 1. There is more to life there's more to success than just being able to talk a lot. Talking a lot will get you far. Being seen will get you far, but it's not the only skill you need to develop. But it is probably one of the most crucial because it's what gets you seen. And visibility is everything. Anyways, that is today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, stay data driven. And I hope you found this video valuable. Until next time, later.